The morning sun filtered through the thick canopy of the Amazon rainforest as Dr. Kate Morrison pushed through the dense undergrowth. She had been tracking unusual magnetic readings for 3 days, following her instruments deeper into uncharted territory. As a marine biologist, she was supposed to be studying river dolphins, but the strange signals had caught her attention. Kate stopped dead in her tracks. Before her lay something that made no sense. A massive wall of dark metal rose from the jungle floor, covered in vines and moss, but clearly artificial. The surface was smooth and seemed to shimmer in the dappled sunlight. She reached out and touched it. The metal was warm and felt alive somehow. "This can't be real," she whispered to herself. Kate pulled out her satellite phone and called her contact at NASA. Within hours, a helicopter landed in the nearest clearing, bringing Dr. Paul Henderson and his team of engineers. Paul was a tall man with graying hair who had spent 20 years working on spacecraft design. "My God," Paul breathed as he saw the structure. "This is definitely not human-made." The team spent the next 2 days clearing vegetation from the object. What they uncovered was incredible. The structure was enormous, roughly the size of 4 city blocks. It had the shape of a ship, but unlike any vessel ever built on Earth. Strange symbols covered parts of the hull, and the metal seemed to repair small scratches by itself. Commander Jake Sullivan arrived on the 3rd day with a military escort. Jake was a no-nonsense officer in his 40s who had been put in charge of investigating unusual phenomena. He took one look at the ship and immediately declared the area classified. "We need to get inside this thing," Jake announced. "But we do it carefully." Paul's team found what looked like an entrance. The door was sealed, but after several hours of work with cutting tools, they managed to create an opening. The air that escaped smelled strange, like ozone and something metallic. Jake led the team inside with flashlights and portable equipment. The interior was vast and dark. Their lights revealed corridors that stretched far beyond their beams. The walls were covered with more of the strange symbols, and everything had an alien geometry that hurt to look at for too long. "Look at this," called Dr. Lisa Carter, the team's expert on biology. She had found what appeared to be a control room. Banks of dark screens lined the walls, and in the center sat several chair-like structures that were clearly not made for humans. But it was Kate who made the most disturbing discovery. In a side corridor, she found bones, lots of them. Some were clearly not human, long crystalline structures that might have belonged to the ship's original crew, but mixed in with them were unmistakably human skulls and bones. "These are old," Lisa said after examining them. "Really old, but how is that possible?" Paul managed to get some power flowing to a small section of the ship. Ancient lights flickered to life, revealing more of the vessel's secrets. The technology was far beyond anything humans had ever built. The ship used some form of energy that Paul couldn't identify, and the materials were unlike anything in Earth's periodic table. As they explored deeper, they found more human remains. Dozens of skeletons scattered throughout the ship. Some were in what looked like prison cells. Others appeared to have died while working on the ship's machinery. "Someone was keeping humans here," Jake said grimly. "But this ship is centuries old. How were there humans here before we had space travel?" The answer came when Lisa managed to access some of the ship's memory banks. The alien writing was impossible to read, but the images were clear enough. The screens showed Earth from space, then scenes of primitive human settlements. They watched in horror as alien craft descended and took people, men, women, and children, loading them into ships like cargo. "They were taking our people," Kate said, her voice shaking. "For hundreds of years they were stealing humans from Earth." The team worked for weeks to understand what they had found. The ship belonged to a race they started calling the Architects, because of their advanced technology and the massive structures shown in the ship's records. The Architects were tall, crystalline beings with 4 arms and large heads. They had been visiting Earth for over 2,000 years. Paul discovered that the ship had crashed not by accident, but because it was fleeing from something. Battle damage covered the hull, and entire sections had been blown away. Whatever had attacked this ship had been using similar technology, but with much more destructive power. The most chilling discovery came from the ship's navigation system. When Paul finally managed to decode it, he found coordinates for hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Each world was marked with symbols that, according to the ship's database, indicated human colonies. "There are millions of our people out there," Paul told the team during one of their evening briefings, "scattered across dozens of star systems, and according to these records, they're all slaves." Jake contacted his superiors immediately. Within days, teams of scientists from around the world were flying to the Amazon site. The discovery was kept completely secret from the public, but governments began mobilizing resources on a scale not seen since World War II. Dr. Amy Foster, a physicist from MIT, joined the team and quickly became fascinated by the ship's propulsion system. The technology appeared to manipulate gravity itself, allowing travel faster than light. If humans could understand it, interstellar travel might be possible. "This changes everything," Amy told Kate one evening as they stood outside the ship. "We're not alone in the universe, and apparently we never have been. But more than that, our own species has been out there all along and we didn't even know it." The team also discovered that the architects had been deliberately keeping humanity from advancing too quickly. Evidence in the ship's files suggested they had interfered with human development for centuries, ensuring that Earth remained a primitive world from which they could harvest people without resistance. "They treated us like cattle," Lisa said bitterly, "a breeding population to supply their empire with workers and test subjects." But the ship also represented hope. If the architects could build vessels like this, then perhaps humans could learn to do the same. The technology was incredibly advanced, but Paul believed it could be reverse-engineered given enough time and resources. As autumn turned to winter in the Amazon, the team realized they had uncovered the greatest secret in human history. Somewhere among the stars, millions of humans lived in bondage, probably not even knowing that Earth existed. The crashed ship was their cry for help across the centuries. Jake stood in the ship's control room one evening, looking at the star, charts that showed where human colonies had been established. Each point of light represented thousands of people who had been stolen from their home world. "We're going to find them," he promised quietly. "Whatever it takes, we're going to bring our people home." Months passed as teams of scientists worked around the clock inside the alien ship. Dr. Paul Henderson had managed to restore power to nearly half of the vessel, and each new section revealed more secrets about humanity's hidden past. The Amazon site had become the most heavily guarded location on Earth, with soldiers from 12 different countries protecting the secret. Rachel Stone arrived in February as the team's new communications expert. She was a brilliant linguist who had spent years studying ancient languages, but nothing had prepared her for the complexity of architect writing. The symbols seemed to change meaning based on context, and some appeared to be mathematical concepts rather than words. "It's like trying to read music and poetry and calculus all at the same time," Rachel explained to Kate during one of their long work sessions. "But I'm starting to see patterns." Her breakthrough came when she realized that the architects didn't think in linear time like humans. Their language reflected a species that could perceive multiple possibilities simultaneously. Once Rachel understood this, the ship's records began to make sense. The truth was worse than anyone had imagined. Earth wasn't just a target for occasional raids, it was a carefully managed farm. The architects had been secretly influencing human civilization for millennia, guiding development to keep humans primitive enough to control but advanced enough to be useful. "They've been playing with us like chess pieces," Rachel told Commander Jake during a briefing. "Every major plague, every dark age, every time human progress slowed down, they were behind it." Dr. Lisa Carter made an even more disturbing discovery in the ship's medical bay. The human remains they had found showed clear signs of genetic modification. The architects had been experimenting on their captives, enhancing physical strength in some, increasing intelligence in others, and creating specialized humans for different types of work. "These people were turned into living tools," Lisa said, her voice filled with disgust. "The architects would take a human, modify their DNA, and then breed them like livestock to create workers suited for specific tasks. But the ship's records also revealed something unexpected. The vessel hadn't been destroyed by enemies of humanity. It had been fleeing from other architects. The crystalline beings were engaged in a massive civil war that had been raging for over 1,000 years. Dr. Alex Turner, a mathematician who had joined the team to help decode the navigation systems, pieced together the political situation. The architect empire had split into several factions. The group that had been harvesting humans called themselves the Harvesters, but they were opposed by other architect groups who apparently had different ideas about how to run their galactic empire. The good news is that they're fighting each other, Alex explained. The bad news is that the Harvesters still consider Earth their property and they're apparently winning the war. Paul's engineering team made steady progress understanding the ship's technology. The propulsion system used controlled gravitational fields to fold space, allowing travel across vast distances in weeks instead of centuries. The weapons systems could manipulate matter at the molecular level, either tearing it apart or fusing it into new forms. This isn't just advanced technology, Paul told the international committee that oversaw the project. This is science so far ahead of us that it might as well be magic, but it's still science, which means we can learn it. The ship's manufacturing systems fascinated everyone. The architects could create almost anything they needed using raw materials and energy. Complex tools, advanced electronics, even food could be produced in a matter of hours. But there was a catch that made everyone uncomfortable. Dr. Carter discovered that many of the ship's systems required biological components to function. The architects used genetic material from various species, including humans, as part of their technology. Their computers contained actual brain tissue, and their weapons were powered by modified organs. They don't just use other species as slaves, Lisa explained during a team meeting. They use them as spare parts for their machines. This discovery sparked heated debates among the team. Some argued that humanity should refuse to use any technology that required biological components. Others believed that survival might require adopting the same methods the architects used. Rachel's translation work revealed more about the scope of the architect empire. Humans had been scattered across 47 different star systems. Some colonies were used for mining, others for manufacturing. A few were apparently used as testing grounds for biological weapons or genetic experiments. The records showed that human colonies had been established in 3 different ways. Some were founded by architect ships like the crashed one, using people stolen from Earth. Others had been created by breeding programs using humans who had been taken centuries earlier. The largest colonies appeared to be the result of entire civilizations being relocated when their homeworlds were strip-mined by architect industrial operations. There are humans out there who have never seen Earth, Rachel said sadly. Whole cultures that developed in slavery. They probably don't even know they're prisoners anymore. But the most shocking discovery came from the ship's security recordings. The team found footage of the vessel's final battle, recorded by automatic systems as the ship fled through space. The attacking vessels weren't harvester ships. They belonged to a human resistance movement. The recording showed human-built spacecraft, clearly based on captured architect technology, but modified with human innovations. The rebel ships had been hunting down harvester vessels and liberating their human cargo. This particular ship had been carrying over 3,000 human prisoners when it was attacked. Our people are already fighting back, Jake realized as he watched the battle footage. Somewhere out there, humans have learned to use architect technology and they're waging war against their captors. The revelation changed everything. Humanity wasn't just a victim in this cosmic conflict. They were already participants, and they had been for decades or possibly centuries. The question was whether Earth could catch up quickly enough to help their scattered kinsmen. President Helen Rodriguez arrived at the site in March, accompanied by leaders from Russia, China, and the European Union. After seeing the evidence, they authorized unlimited funding for what they codenamed Project Liberation. The goal was simple: reverse engineer architect technology and build humanity's first interstellar fleet. We have people out there who need our help, the president told the assembled team. We're going to find them, and we're going to bring them home, all of them. Amy Foster was put in charge of propulsion research, while Paul took over weapons development. Lisa would lead the biological systems team, despite her moral objections to using organic components. Rachel continued her translation work, focusing on finding the locations of human colonies. The work was incredibly difficult. Architect technology operated on principles that human science was only beginning to understand. But the team had something the original builders never expected: human creativity and the desperate motivation of a species fighting for its survival. They made one mistake, Jake said during a planning meeting. They taught humans to hate them, and now we're going to show them what humans do to their enemies. By summer, they had their first prototype. It was barely functional and could only travel to the edge of the solar system, but it proved that human-built faster-than-light travel was possible. More importantly, it proved that humans could improve on architect designs. The ship they were building incorporated human innovations that the architects had never considered. Human computers were different from architect bio-neural networks. Human weapons could be mass-produced instead of grown, and human tactics emphasized flexibility over the rigid hierarchies that architect records suggested their species preferred. "We're not going to beat them by becoming them," Paul declared. "We're going to beat them by being better than them." 2 years after the discovery of the alien ship, the Amazon site had transformed into the most advanced research facility on Earth. Scientists from every major nation worked together in underground laboratories built around the crashed vessel. The project had consumed more resources than the Manhattan Project and the Apollo program combined. Dr. Paul Henderson stood in the main engineering bay, watching teams of technicians assemble humanity's first interstellar spacecraft. The ship was sleek and powerful, combining the best of architect technology with human innovations. Unlike the organic curves of the alien vessel, the human ship had clean lines and modular components that could be easily repaired or upgraded. "She's beautiful," said Colonel Sam Mitchell, the military officer who had been assigned to oversee the weapon systems. Sam was a tough Marine who had served in 3 wars, but even he was impressed by what they had accomplished. The ship's propulsion system was Amy Foster's masterpiece. She had spent 18 months studying the crashed vessel's gravity drive, learning how it folded space to allow faster-than-light travel. But Amy hadn't simply copied the alien design. She had improved it. "The architects built their drives like living organs," Amy explained to a group of visiting officials. "They're efficient, but they're also fragile and hard to repair. We built ours like machines. They're more robust, easier to maintain, and surprisingly, they're actually faster." The weapons systems represented a different kind of breakthrough. The architects used controlled gravitational fields to tear apart enemy ships at the molecular level. It was devastatingly effective, but it required enormous amounts of energy and could only target one ship at a time. Sam's team had developed something better. Human-built weapons could create cascading gravitational waves that could disable multiple targets simultaneously. They had also created defensive shields that could deflect architect weapons back at their attackers. "We studied their tactics from the battle recordings," Sam told Paul during a strategy meeting. "They fight like aristocrats dueling with swords. Very formal, very predictable. We fight like street gangs with machine guns. Messy, flexible, and absolutely ruthless." Dr. Lisa Carter had made perhaps the most important breakthrough of all. The ship's life support systems didn't require any biological components. Lisa had found a way to replicate the functions of architect biotechnology, using synthetic materials that could be manufactured on Earth. "We don't need to harvest other species to build our ships," Lisa announced proudly. "We can create everything. We need using artificial systems that work better than the biological ones." But the most significant discovery came from Dr. Ryan Clark, a computer scientist who had been working with Rachel Stone to understand architect information systems. Ryan had discovered that the aliens' computers were incredibly powerful but also incredibly rigid. They couldn't adapt to unexpected situations the way human computers could. "Their AI systems are like chess grandmasters," Ryan explained. "Brilliant at what they're designed to do, but completely helpless when faced with something outside their programming. Our computers are more like jazz musicians. They can improvise." Rachel's translation work had provided the target for humanity's first mission. A planet called Kepler 442b, located 37 light-years from Earth, was home to over 2 million humans according to the architect records. The colony had been established 600 years ago, using people taken from medieval Europe. The records show it's primarily a mining operation, Rachel told Commander Jake during a mission briefing. The humans are used to extract rare minerals from deep underground. The architect garrison is small, maybe 50 individuals, because they've been controlling the human population through genetic conditioning and propaganda. President Rodriguez had approved the mission personally. The ship, christened ETS Liberation, would be commanded by Jake Sullivan, who had been promoted to admiral. The crew of 200 volunteers understood that they might never return to Earth. "We're not just going to free those people," Jake told his crew during their final briefing on Earth. "We're going to show the galaxy that humanity is no longer helpless. We're going to announce that we're coming for all our people, wherever they are." The Liberation launched on a cold morning in December. The ship slipped out of Earth's atmosphere silently, using gravitational manipulation to avoid creating the massive energy signature that architect ships produced. Human stealth technology was another innovation the aliens had never developed. The journey to Kepler 442b took 3 weeks, a trip that would have taken human technology 40,000 years. Amy's improved drive system performed perfectly, and the ship arrived exactly on schedule at the edge of the target system. What they found was heartbreaking. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, but orbital scans revealed the extent of human suffering. Massive mining operations scarred the surface, and cities that were clearly prison camps housed millions of people living in primitive conditions. Captain Nina Wells led the reconnaissance team that landed first. Nina was a former Navy SEAL who had volunteered for the mission despite having 3 young children back on Earth. Her team used human-built camouflage technology to observe the colony without being detected. "It's worse than we thought," Nina reported back to the Liberation. "These people have been conditioned to think of themselves as inferior. They worship the architects like gods. Many of them probably won't want to be rescued." The human colonists on Kepler 442b had been genetically modified over generations. Some had been enhanced for heavy labor, with increased muscle mass and bone density. Others had been modified for intelligence, serving as administrators and technicians. All of them had been psychologically conditioned to believe that resistance was impossible. Jake made the difficult decision to begin with a demonstration of power. The Liberation's weapons targeted the Architect Administrative Center, a massive crystal structure that housed the alien overseers. In less than 10 minutes, the building was reduced to glowing slag. The response was immediate. Architect patrol ships launched from hidden bases around the planet. There were 6 of them, each roughly the same size as the Liberation. According to the alien records, this should have been overwhelming firepower. Instead, it became a slaughter. The human ship's weapons could target all 6 enemy vessels simultaneously, while their rigid tactical programming made them predictable. Within an hour, the architect garrison had been completely destroyed. But the real challenge was dealing with the human population. Many of the colonists fled when they saw the architect ships being destroyed, believing that humanity's rebellion would bring terrible retribution from the alien empire. Nina's team spent weeks working with local human leaders, trying to convince them that freedom was possible. The breakthrough came when they demonstrated Earth technology to the colony's engineers. The humans of Kepler 442b had been deliberately kept at a medieval technology level, forbidden from developing advanced tools or weapons. "We're from Earth," Nina told a gathering of colonial leaders. "We're your cousins, your family, and we've come to take you home." Dr. Carter arrived with the second wave to assess the genetic modifications that had been performed on the colonists. Some changes were beneficial and could be preserved if the people wanted. Others were clearly designed to make humans more docile and compliant. "We can reverse most of this," Lisa told the colonial medical staff. "But it will take time, and some people might choose to keep their modifications. Enhanced strength or intelligence aren't necessarily bad things as long as they're chosen freely." The liberation of Kepler 442b sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For the first time in over 2,000 years, a human settlement had successfully rebelled against architect control. More importantly, they had done it using technology that was superior to what their captors possessed. Within weeks, The Liberation was receiving coded transmissions from resistance movements on dozens of other worlds. Humans who had been fighting hopeless guerrilla wars for generations suddenly had proof that victory was possible. Jake stood on the bridge of his ship, looking down at the planet they had liberated. Millions of humans were free for the first time in centuries, and the galaxy would never be the same. "Send a message to Earth," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them we need more ships. Tell them we've got a galaxy to liberate." 5 years had passed since Admiral Jake Sullivan first stepped aboard the Liberation. Earth's shipyards now stretched across the solar system, from massive construction facilities orbiting Mars to smaller assembly stations in the asteroid belt. Humanity had gone from building its first interstellar ship to operating a fleet of 37 vessels, each more advanced than the last. The success at Kepler 442b had changed everything. News of the Liberation spread through hidden networks, maintained by human resistance movements across the galaxy. Coded messages arrived daily at Earth, desperate pleas for help from colonies that had been fighting hopeless battles against their architect captors for generations. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the ETS Vengeance, the newest and most powerful ship in the human fleet. Kate had come a long way from the marine biologist who first discovered the crashed alien vessel in the Amazon. Now she commanded a crew of 400 and oversaw liberation operations in 3 different star systems. "We've got another message from the Vega system," reported Lieutenant Ben Parker, the ship's communications officer. "The mining colonies there are ready to coordinate an uprising if we can provide support." Kate studied the tactical display showing human fleet positions across known space. Each ship represented thousands of volunteers who had given up their lives on Earth to fight for the freedom of humans they had never met. The fleet was growing, but so were the demands for help. Dr. Paul Henderson, now Earth's chief of spacecraft development, had outdone himself with the Vengeance. The ship incorporated 5 years of improvements on captured architect technology. Its weapons could level mountains, its shields could deflect planet-killing asteroids, and its drive system could cross the galaxy in months instead of years. The 4 architects never imagined that anyone would improve their designs, Paul explained to Kate during a technical briefing. "They built their technology to last forever without change. We built ours to evolve." The human approach to technology was radically different from the architect method. Where the aliens created single-purpose tools that couldn't be modified, humans built modular systems that could be adapted for new situations. Human ships could be reconfigured between missions, turning a transport vessel into a battleship, or a hospital ship depending on what was needed. Captain Nina Wells had become something of a legend among the resistance movements. Her tactics for liberating human colonies had been studied and copied across the galaxy. Nina specialized in what she called surgical liberation, precisely targeted strikes that eliminated architect control while minimizing damage to human populations. "The key is understanding that most colonies don't want to be liberated at first," Nina explained to a group of new ship captains during a training session on Mars. "These people have been slaves for centuries. They've been taught that resistance means death. Our job is to prove that freedom is possible." The liberation of each new world followed a similar pattern. Human ships would arrive quietly, using their superior stealth technology to avoid architect sensors. They would contact local resistance movements and provide them with weapons and communication equipment. Then, when the uprising began, the human fleet would eliminate the alien garrison with overwhelming force. But each liberation created new challenges. The humans on different worlds had developed unique cultures during their centuries of slavery. Some had been modified so extensively that they could barely survive on Earth-like planets. Others had adapted so completely to their alien environment that they considered it home. Dr. Lisa Carter now led the genetic recovery program, working to help liberated humans decide whether to keep their artificial modifications or return to baseline human genetics. It was delicate work requiring both scientific expertise and psychological counseling. "We found a world where the humans have been modified to breathe methane instead of oxygen," Lisa reported during a fleet medical conference. "They've been living in underground cities for 400 years. Technically, they're still human, but they might not be able to survive on Earth without extensive genetic therapy. The architect response to human expansion had been surprisingly disorganized. The alien empire was still engaged in its civil war, and the Harvester faction seemed unable to coordinate an effective response to human raids. Individual garrisons would fight desperately to hold their colonies, but there was no central strategy to stop the Liberation Fleet. Dr. Alex Turner, working from his position at Earth's Strategic Analysis Center, had figured out why. The architect empire was much larger than humans had initially realized, spanning thousands of star systems, but it was also incredibly rigid and bureaucratic. Orders took months to travel from Central Command to outlying colonies, and local commanders had no authority to adapt to new situations. "They're like a massive dinosaur," Alex explained to Admiral Sullivan during a strategic planning meeting. "Very powerful, but the brain is so far from the tail that by the time they realize they've been hurt, we've already moved on to the next target." The human fleet had liberated 18 star systems containing 43 human colonies. Each world added its own ships and crews to the growing armada. Humans who had never seen Earth were now fighting alongside descendants of people who remembered blue skies and green trees. Commander Ryan Clark had emerged as one of the fleet's most innovative tacticians. His specialty was coordinating multiple ships in complex operations using the networked AI systems that human engineers had developed. Unlike architect vessels, which operated independently, human ships could share information and coordinate their actions in real time. "We fight like a pack," Ryan explained to a war college class on Luna. "Each ship is smart on its own, but together we're brilliant. The architects fight like chess masters playing separate games. They can't adapt when we change the rules." But the greatest victory came in the Proxima Centauri system, where humans discovered something that changed their understanding of the galactic conflict. The colony there wasn't just a mining operation or a slave farm. It was a research facility where architects had been experimenting with human genetics for over 1,000 years. The liberated records showed that humans weren't just randomly useful to the architects. Human DNA contained something unique, something that the aliens needed for their own genetic engineering projects. Humans were being used not just as slaves, but as the raw material for creating improved architect soldiers and workers. "They've been stealing our evolution," Lisa said angrily as she reviewed the captured data. "Every human adaptation, every genetic improvement that appeared naturally in our species, they've been harvesting it and incorporating it into their own biology." The discovery explained why the architects had been so careful to preserve human populations rather than simply exterminating them. They needed genetic diversity to continue their experiments. It also explained why human technology was proving superior to architect designs. Humans had been naturally selected for innovation and adaptability, traits that the aliens could copy but not truly understand. Admiral Morrison's fleet struck next at the Tau Ceti system, home to the largest known human population outside of Earth. Over 12 million people lived in massive underground cities mining rare elements for the architect war machine. The operation required careful coordination between 15 human ships and took 3 months to complete. The battle at Tau Ceti became known as the first true defeat of an architect battle fleet. When the human ships attacked the system, they found it defended by 42 alien warships, the largest concentration of enemy forces encountered so far. The architects had finally decided to make a stand. Kate commanded the human fleet from the Vengeance, using tactics that would have been impossible with architect technology. The human ships spread out across the entire system, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously while sharing targeting data through their networked computers. "They're trying to fight us ship to ship," Kate observed as she watched the tactical display. "They still don't understand that we're not individual vessels. We're one big organism with multiple bodies." The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the architect fleet. Not a single alien ship escaped, while the human fleet suffered only minor damage. The victory sent a clear message across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer hiding in the shadows. They were ready to fight the architects on equal terms. But the real triumph came when the human colonists of Tau Ceti saw their liberators. Unlike the frightened people of earlier colonies, these humans had maintained a strong resistance movement. They welcomed the Earth fleet as heroes returning from a long journey. "We never forgot," said Maria Santos, one of the colony leaders. "For 12 generations we told our children that someday our cousins would come from the mother world to free us. Today, that promise is finally kept." Standing in the main city of Tau Ceti, surrounded by millions of humans who had been born in slavery but would die free, Admiral Morrison felt the weight of history. Humanity had taken its first steps toward reclaiming its scattered children, but the journey was far from over. "This is just the beginning," she told the assembled crowds. "We have people to find, worlds to liberate, and a galaxy to reclaim." The architects thought they could how wrong they. 8 years after the discovery of the crashed ship in the Amazon, Earth faced its greatest test. Long-range sensors detected the largest architect fleet ever assembled heading directly toward humanity's home system. Over 200 warships, including massive command vessels that dwarfed anything humans had previously encountered, were approaching Earth with obvious hostile intent. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the command center of Luna Base, coordinating the defense of humanity's Earthworld. The human fleet had grown to over 300 ships, but they were scattered across dozens of star systems, continuing liberation operations. Only 47 vessels could reach Earth in time to face the approaching invasion force. "They're not coming to negotiate," reported Dr. Rachel Stone, who was monitoring alien communications from her position at the Intelligence Center. "The transmissions we're intercepting are clear. They want to reclaim their biological preserve and put an end to human resistance once and for all." The architect fleet was led by Harvester Prime Vexthor, a powerful alien commander who had spent decades trying to organize a response to human expansion. According to intercepted communications, Vexthor had finally convinced the other architect factions that humanity represented an existential threat to their empire. Admiral Jake Sullivan commanded the defense fleet from his flagship, ETS Liberation. The old ship had been upgraded many times over the years, but Jake refused to transfer to a newer vessel. The Liberation had been present at humanity's first victory, and he wanted it there for what might be their last battle. "We're outnumbered, 4-1, reported Captain Nina Wells from her position aboard the ETS Freedom. "But we've beaten worse odds before." Dr. Paul Henderson had spent months preparing Earth's defenses. The planet was now protected by a network of orbital weapons platforms, each equipped with the most advanced human technology. Massive shield generators could protect entire continents, and automated defense systems could target thousands of enemy ships simultaneously. "The key to winning this battle isn't just our technology," Paul explained during the final strategy briefing. "It's that we understand how architects think, but they still don't understand us." The human defense plan relied on the same networked coordination that had proven successful in previous battles. Every ship, orbital platform, and ground-based weapon system was connected through quantum communication links that allowed instantaneous coordination across the entire solar system. Commander Ryan Clark had been promoted to Fleet Tactical Coordinator, a position that existed only in human military doctrine. His job was to coordinate the actions of dozens of ships and hundreds of weapons platforms as if they were a single organism. No architect commander had ever faced anything like it. "Remember," Ryan told the fleet commanders during their final briefing, "we're not fighting their way. We're fighting our way. Stay flexible, stay coordinated, and trust your crews." The architect fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system exactly when long-range sensors had predicted. Vexthor's command ship, a crystalline behemoth the size of a small moon, led the formation in a traditional architect battle formation. The alien ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, their weapons charging with the slow, methodical precision that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia. Admiral Morrison watched from the Vengeance as the enemy fleet advanced. The architects were confident, approaching Earth as if they were simply reclaiming lost property. They had no idea what humanity had become in the years since the first liberation. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," she broadcast to the human fleet. "Today we fight not just for Earth but for every human who has ever lived in slavery. Today we show the galaxy that no species will ever again bow to architect tyranny. All ships engage at will." The battle began with a devastating surprise. Human ships had been hiding throughout the solar system, using advanced stealth technology and the cover of asteroids and planetary rings. When the Architect fleet reached Mars orbit, they found themselves surrounded by enemies they hadn't detected. The first human strike targeted the Architect command and control systems. Ryan's coordinated attack disabled 12 major enemy ships in the opening minutes, using precision gravitational weapons to surgically remove their communication arrays and navigation systems. "They're trying to reform their battle lines," reported Captain Ben Parker from the ETS Determination. "But they can't coordinate without their communication networks." Vexthor's response was predictably rigid. The Architect commander ordered his ships to form defensive circles around the command vessel, a textbook maneuver that had worked for thousands of years against conventional enemies. But humans weren't conventional enemies. The human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each attacking from a different vector. Some targeted weapon systems, others focused on engines, and still others launched boarding parties using advanced teleportation technology that the Architects had never developed. Admiral Sullivan led the most audacious attack of the battle. The Liberation, along with 8 other veteran ships, punched through the Architect defensive formation and headed directly for Vexthor's command vessel. The alien ship was massive and heavily defended, but it was also slow and inflexible. "All ships concentrate fire on the command ship's central crystalline matrix," Jake ordered. "If we can take out their leader, the rest of the fleet will lose coordination." The attack on the command ship became the turning point of the battle. Human weapons, designed to be adaptable and efficient, proved devastating against Architect biotechnology. The alien ship's living armor could repair minor damage, but it couldn't adapt fast enough to counter weapons that constantly changed their attack patterns. Dr. Lisa Carter, monitoring the battle from Earth's Medical Command Center, watched in amazement as human tactics proved superior to technology that was thousands of years more advanced. The Architects had created perfect tools for fighting wars the way they had always been fought. Humans had created imperfect tools that could adapt to any situation. "Their ships are masterpieces," Lisa observed. "But our ships are artists." The destruction of Vexthor's command ship sent shockwaves through the Architect fleet. For the first time in recorded history, a Harvester Prime had been killed by the species they considered livestock. The remaining alien ships began to retreat in disorder, abandoning their carefully planned formation. But Admiral Morrison wasn't finished. She had spent years studying Architect psychology, and she knew that a simple military victory wouldn't be enough. The aliens needed to understand that humanity was no longer their prey. "Open a channel to all Architect vessels," she ordered. "Full broadcast, all frequencies." Standing on the bridge of the Vengeance, surrounded by the wreckage of the most powerful fleet the Architects had ever assembled, Kate delivered a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. "I am Admiral Kate Morrison of the Human Liberation Fleet. For 2,000 years, your species has stolen our people, enslaved our children, and treated us like animals. Today, that ends forever. Any faction that continues to hold humans in bondage will face Earth's fleet. We will find every human colony, liberate every slave, and hunt down every slaver. The galaxy has a new power, and we remember what you did to us." The surviving Architect ships fled the solar system, carrying news of their defeat to every corner of their empire. Within weeks, human resistance movements across the galaxy reported that their Architect overseers were abandoning colonies and retreating to heavily fortified core worlds. 5 years after the Great Battle, Admiral Morrison stood once again in the Amazon rainforest, in the memorial that had been built around the crashed alien ship. The walls were covered with the names of every human known to have died in Architect captivity over the centuries. But they also contained something new: the names of the colonies that had been liberated and the humans who had died fighting for freedom. "They thought we were their property," Morrison said to the assembled crowd of liberation veterans, colony representatives, and Earth dignitaries. "They learned we were their reckoning." Humanity now operated over 300 starships and had liberated 62 worlds containing over 50 million humans. The former Architect Empire had fragmented into dozens of smaller factions, most of which now sought trade agreements with Earth rather than risking military confrontation. Dr. Carter, now director of the Galactic Human Reintegration Program, faced the complex challenge of reconnecting Earth with its scattered children. Some colonies wanted to return to their ancestral home, while others preferred to remain on worlds they had come to consider home. All of them needed help healing from centuries of slavery and genetic modification. "We have humans who have never seen a natural sky," Lisa reported to the Global Council. "We have cultures that developed in isolation for 800 years. We have languages that split off from Earth languages before Shakespeare was born. Bringing our species back together is going to take generations." But there were also remarkable discoveries. Human colonies had developed technologies that Earth had never imagined, art forms that had grown from the unique experiences of life under alien rule, scientific advances that came from humans who had been forced to solve problems no Earth human had ever faced.